Vision. Following clues left by our ancestors, we unbury the past to reveal a knowledge of unfathomable value, putting us just a little closer to our own true birthrights. From the secret history of a possible bloodline of Jesus Christ, the secret history of America's founders, to the secret history of extraterrestrial interaction on our planet, here to bring light to the night. Your host for Night Vision Radio, René Barnett.
Hey everybody, welcome to Night Vision again. If this is your first time, I hope it won't be your last. Got a great show planned for you tonight, but I first have to warn you, there is a pox upon my house. And we're all coming down with some kind of weird barking flu where you've got this dry cough that literally sounds like a dog barking. So if you hear dogs barking tonight, it won't be the usual. It won't be my puppies. It'll probably be me. But I'm going to try to spare you and my guest as much as I can. Now tonight, we're going to delve into some dark secrets, secrets of the Vatican Archives. Some of the things that they hold there, including ancient texts and other things, but moreover, cultural items of importance to different groups, including many, many Native American tribes. Why in the world is the Vatican holding on to ceremonial items that belong to our Native Americans? I'd really, really like to know what's in it for them to hold on to that stuff and not even allow the tribal representatives to view them, much less even speak about returning them to the tribes. So who do I need? I need a spy. I need a former AFOSI. I need Walter Bosley. Hey, Walter.
Hey, Renee.
How are you?
Doing good. It's Friday and, it
is
summertime officially, so it's good.
Yeah, it feels great. We're here in Southern California, and we've got some real nice weather going on, at least for the moment.
Yeah.
Hopefully no extreme heat waves on the way. But right now we're enjoying it. But, the Holy Roman Church, hopefully not to upset anyone or challenge anybody's faith, has a terrible dark history.
Right.
They've got a history of, killing their non-believers or their adversaries, the so-called heretics, and just mowing down villages and towns. I think it was Pope Leo who famously advised the soldiers, when they ask, how will we know who the heretics are? And he says, kill them all. God will know his own. So they would just mow through these towns and villages. I know of a couple in France that I've actually been to that were completely just destroyed. But what we're talking about tonight is the confiscation of items that obviously don't belong to them. Especially, I'm thinking of, some of our ceremonial items that belong to Native American tribes. Yes. Why do you think they would hold on to those things?
Primarily, in my opinion, there are two reasons. Number one, when they came to the Americas and they got their hands on these things, their first goal was to suppress so that they could force Roman Catholic Christianity on the locals, on the native cultures here. Secondly, I think there are very fascinating and vital pieces of information and history, which are kept secret, about human history on Earth that they just don't want out, to the masses. And, take your pick. Either one of these is a heinous reason for holding on to these things, not returning them to the nations from which they took them. And it's just more of the same from the Vatican. It seems like it's been going on for centuries.
I mean, one particular instance that I know about personally, and some of you guys may remember my friend Lisa LaRue Baker, who was from the Katua Band of Cherokee Indians. She was the cultural and historical director. And I know, I remember when she wrote to the Vatican, petitioned the Vatican as an official of the tribe to, we're not asking you to return them, just please let me come and look at them. And they were just ignored. And that's the usual response. They don't usually write back and say no, they just ignore you.
Right.
And those wampum belts, which they have of the Katua Band and also many other tribes, are these ceremonial belts which are beaded. But you're right, they do contain information. They are beaded in such a way that they tell a story. Now, I know there are some big questions about the origin stories of the Cherokees, and some of these old legends that are passed down by the elders,
right?
And has been actually addressed. You can look it up you can Google it and find where people have looked into the fact that that the Cherokees might be the lost tribe of Israel. And their origin story comes with this big giant spider, a female spider, crossing the water, and she's carrying on her back the sacred fires. And so the Katua Band are known as the original people and the keepers of the fires. And so they have these, I think there are 3 of them, these fires that they never allow to go out in certain places. They're ceremonial fires, and they treat them. They treat them with sage and different things to keep them. They may not always be flaming, but there's always embers. They never go completely out. And that's what they feel they're symbolizing, was that giant spider coming across with the fires that they then had the responsibility for keeping going.
Yeah.
So I wonder if any of that could have any validity as in terms of, the origins of some of these peoples.
I'm a great believer in the nugget of truth idea. You got to look at these things and look closely and analyze them and do like your own research to get to the whatever that nugget of truth is. Now, I'm certainly a diffusionist, which means I think human cultures and civilizations have been traveling all over this planet. I subscribe to the idea that oceans are highways, not barriers. And, a civilization becomes arrogant when it thinks nothing came before it as advanced as itself or as great and glorious as itself. When we hear these stories that, okay, this group might be a lost tribe of that group, I think, that's certainly worth considering because, people were sailing all over the world, way back farther than academia and mainstream science and history want us to believe. And, the idea of what people want us to believe, is what leads organizations like the Vatican and the Roman Catholic Church to do the things they do, where they want to decide what we know. They want to decide what the narrative is. And, I see that a great problem behind this is that, and I'm not sure, I'm not an expert on this, and perhaps I should be more of one before I comment, but to my knowledge, and I've looked at this stuff for a while and observed like most people do, to my knowledge, what you would call the Yahwistic monotheisms, okay? That is the religions of, the God of Abraham, the Israelis, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. They all seem, admittedly, Judaism let it go a long time ago. Christianity and Islam have a serious addiction problem, and that addiction problem is to this arrogant idea of converting people, of
Right.
going out into the world and converting people to your religion and saving the world with your religious faith. And as we know, I don't have to belabor it, so much violence and dominance in different ways has been foisted upon humanity just through Christianity and Islam alone. Don't get me wrong, I grew up in the United States, Western civilization. I grew up in a Christian context. I walked away from what I've learned is called churchianity. And that's the problem, is churchianity. Churchianity and true Christianity to me are two different things. And it's this churchianity perspective that, in this case, we're talking about the Vatican, we're talking about Roman Catholicism, that they have infamously operated under, to one extreme or the other, to basically spread their particular corporate philosophy, their particular power, their particular control. And I think it's an arrogance that they hold on to these items. Why not have, today there are these artisans and craftsmen who can replicate amazingly. In fact, many museums, when you go to the museum and you're looking at an ancient relic or something, you're actually looking at a replica. You're not looking at the real thing, because they want to protect the real thing. And I think that's fantastic. Why doesn't the Vatican return all these things they stole from other parts of the world and just maintain replicas? If it's really just, to be a library and a museum, kind of thing, do that. No, they
it's mine.
They're narcissists. They are really truly an organization, a corporation of narcissists.
Yeah, absolutely. It just, and can you imagine, how much all that stuff is worth, not to mention the gilded cathedrals and everything with dripping in gold.
Right.
I mean, what is the the purpose of the church? Isn't it to help people? Isn't it to take care of the poor and the sick?
Right. I once had an assignment in Rome, and I had to be there for 30 days, about 30 days, 4 weeks. And the person I was working with at the time, she wanted to go to the Vatican. We had a day off. So she wanted to go to go do the tour and everything. So I went down to, Vatican City or whatever with her, where the big famous, plaza is. And I said, okay, I'll be out here at one of the cafes when you're done. Just, give me a call on the cell phone. And she was shocked. She goes, "You don't want to go in?" And I said, "I have no interest in going in there." And they're like, "Oh my God, the Sistine Chapel, the this, that, and the other." I'm like, I do not feel like I missed a thing by not going in the Vatican. And I feel the same way you do. All that opulence. Don't tell me it's for the glory of God or the glory of Christ. Anybody who still believes that, I'm sorry for you.
Yeah. But this idea, like you said, of churchianity, if they are trying to recruit and evangelize, they're going about it in utterly the wrong way, because they're turning people off in droves from organized religion, at least.
And they're not the only ones who do it. American Protestant evangelistic fundamentalism. Oh my God.
I know.
They are a product of the colonial Puritans. After the Puritans pissed off everybody in England and Europe said, "Oh, no, don't come here." They came to the colonies, right, in the 17th century, and they started their brand of fanatical insanity there. And our present American Protestant fundamentalist evangelical Christianity, churchianity, is a product of the Puritan influence. We could have done
really
well without them here.
Yeah, it really is. We do have these, as a nation,
Yeah.
sort of these puritanical standards and ideals.
Mhm.
And it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Yeah, you're right. That's what got us in trouble in the first place. It got
Yeah.
us booted out of England.
Well, the Puritans were told, no, get out. And Europe didn't want them, so they come over
Yeah, you're
here
both
and
fanatic.
murdered a bunch of women because they thought they were, putting hexes on them.
Yeah, women always get called witches, unfortunately. But
Well, there's some men that when they because they can't control the women, suddenly they have to demonize the women,
right.
rather than just saying, "Hey, why should I want to control another human being?"
Yeah, yeah. Although I do have a grandfather that was exiled from Scotland. He was the Earl of Luss. He got exiled for being a witch and a necromancer. He's my most interesting
Right.
relative.
Exactly. Yeah.
That wasn't all. He also it was also for incest, but the incest part was not blood incest. It was he ran off with his younger sister-in-law.
And they called that incest?
They called that incest and went off to Italy. Yeah, his name was John Calhoun.
Well, they were probably welcome in Italy, the
Yeah.
land of lovers.
Yeah, his nickname was the Black Cock of the West. You can look him up.
Oh, that's great.
I love it. He kind of looks like my dad, actually.
Oh.
But interestingly, yeah. But yeah, it's really not nice to have any group trying to control everyone else, and
Right.
that's what I see religion throughout history has done. Organized religion.
Yeah, it unfortunately has a tendency to go that way.
Yeah,
Particularly the monotheisms. The idea that there is only one God. And I mean, we could talk all night. We could talk for 3 hours on the problems with religion, and I mean religion in the small r, just the concept of
right.
religion. It doesn't matter which particular faith, but the monotheisms tend to be the biggest problems, and the big leader of historically being a problem in Christian churchianity has been the Roman Catholic Church, more particularly the Vatican, because as you know, there's millions of Catholic people around the world they're wonderful. They're not these evil psychos wanting to control people or necessarily go out there and convert everybody. They're good folks.
Yeah,
It's the leadership, the priesthood in the Vatican
yeah,
problem. And they came over here. You remember the Jesuits got thrown out of the Americas for this very thing within their own church. I mean, other orders and finally the Vatican had to banish, had to withdraw all the Jesuits. This was in the 18th century when they were poised to kick off here in California the missions. They were started to build the missions, our Spanish mission trail that everybody, a lot of people are familiar with, and they were just poised to come up into what's called Alta California and establish these missions when they got recalled because they were trying to control politically, economically, everything and everybody, even within the church itself, within the other orders. So they got yanked back to Rome. But in my opinion, they were still calling the shots, whether it was the Dominicans, running the missions or not. I still think they were under control of Vatican, leadership and orders. But they come over here and they participate in atrocities, whether their version tells you that or not, and they steal all this stuff to greatly to suppress the very valuable historical information that's within.
right. You know, another thing that they're purportedly protecting at the Vatican is the prophecies of Fatima, and
Yes.
it's supposed to be, you know, the final prophecy is supposed to be something really earth-shattering.
Mhm.
Do you have any thoughts on that at all?
Well, one thing that comes to mind, when you look at it is, was it truly earth shattering to all of us, or was it just earth shattering for that
To
church?
the church.
Yeah. And
I think it's the end of the
yeah,
church.
that's my understanding, is it has something to do with the end of that damn church.
Yeah. The
Um,
last pope and the end of the
and
church.
They're like, oh my gosh, we can't have that out there.
Yeah.
So yeah, of course it's going to get suppressed. Of course, when it was supposed to be revealed, it's not going to be, because um, in true religious priesthood fashion, going back thousands of years, the priesthood always knows better than you do.
Right.
The priesthood in any religion, these days we're dealing with it with churchianity, here, mostly in the West. It's the biggest trust me, bro, grift going on in human history. We're the priesthood. We're closer to God, or in some cases in ancient times, we communicate directly with the
That's
God
right.
we.
You need us to even communicate with God.
Yeah, you need us to communicate. You need us to understand. I mean, think about it. Confession. If I understand the Bible correctly, you're supposed to pray in private, and you don't. Nowhere in there does it say you need a confessor. But the Roman Catholic Church has convinced millions of people, and continue to do so, that they need to, confess. So the whole thing about confession, in my opinion, was just so the local priest could know everybody's dirty laundry better, to control them.
That makes the most sense, actually. But, you know, I've often thought about, the big loss or losses that must have been seen at from the fires at the Library of Alexandria.
Mm.
Um, and I mean, just common sense tells me that some things were saved, some things were
Oh,
retrieved and
sure.
saved. So I'm wondering if
Mhm.
that might be part of the secret text stash at the Vatican Archives, if any of that might have come out of the library at Alexandria.
I would think so, because when I was, one of my books, I really, actually, a couple of my books, I had to jump into that topic. And what I found was something you don't really hear about that much, but it was this. There was oh gosh, it was the equivalent of our National Archives in Constantinople, right? And also in, oh my gosh, somewhere farther east, there were two other great repositories, just like the Library of
Oh,
Alexandria.
wow.
And they had just about everything the other one had. So the idea that we lost everything that was in the Library of Alexandria actually is not accurate, because
Wow.
these other archives had copies, or originals, and Alexandria had copy, but they had much of the same information. And what's interesting is the Fourth Crusade, okay, that was supposed to be back to the Holy Land, the Middle East and all that. Gee, they stopped in Constantinople and sacked, the Eastern Orthodox capital there. And after that, funny thing, the Renaissance started happening in Western Europe after the Fourth Crusade. And then, of course, with the Renaissance, then came the age of exploration and the opening up of the Americas. And the idea is that the orders, the knightly orders and the militaries that participated in that Fourth Crusade, sacked the archive and got all
Would
the.
that have been the Poor Knights of Christ, the Templars?
Oh, here's the thing. Here's the thing. The Templars did not directly participate in the sacking of the city. They helped facilitate um, uh, some of the resources, okay, and materials. And mostly they helped broker an agreement between the Venetians, okay, the bankers of Venice, with the Egyptians. And the Venetians basically lied to the Egyptians through the Templars. And the Templars, when they figured this out, they wanted no part of the actual assault on Constantinople. It's interesting. It was kind of like they backed out of the genocide in the Albigensian Crusade, if you recall.
Right.
When the Pope and the King that you quoted before said kill them all, the Templars, these were people they were doing business with. These were people who shared some esoteric beliefs with the Templars when it got down to it, and they didn't want any part of this genocide. Now, I'm one of those that I agree with the argument that definitely got the Templars marked for persecution. The fact that they would not participate in the Albigensian. So they didn't actively participate in the sacking of Constantinople, but I do think they got the benefit.
We found evidence that there was a lot of sympathies from the Templars toward the so-called heretics, the Cathars.
Yeah.
There's a little town, a little village called Puisse, Puisse, I believe, in France, and there is a Cathar, the old Cathar headquarters and the old Templar preceptory right next to each other, and there's a lot of history there. But anyway, I don't think everyone had the same idea about the so-called heretics, know.
Well, it's again, not to sound like a broken record, and lest anyone think that I'm not like an anti-Christian guy. Don't get me started on the horrors and sins and crimes of the Islamic fanatics. Okay, I was in counterterrorism for a number of years. Okay, I spent a lot of time in that part of the world. I've studied that foe, and their fanatics are
horrible.
Wow. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's the problem is Christianity and Islam need to get their fanatics under control and need to stop this conversion thing. But Alexandria was sacked more than once by, we know by Christian fanatics, other times by Muslim fanatics.
Now, these other repositories that you're talking about in Constantinople and maybe another one, where are those things now?
Well, that's just it. Who got them? I say, yes, the Vatican. To answer your question, I went around the barn to answer your question. I think there's a lot of stuff in the Vatican archive we don't get to see that is from Alexandria and from that archive in Constantinople. That was
see.
Crusade.
Oh my gosh! It's just it seems like such a crime to hide information in history that people would love to see and know about. It really seems criminal to me.
Well, think about it, it's a reflection of how these organizations treat, theology and philosophy. What happens is if you know too much about yourself and your own history, then you don't need them anymore. In fact, I would venture to say the more you know, the more you will reject them. And they've had power and wealth for far too long to let that go so easily.
Yeah. I mean, there seems to be, and now I don't want to get too woo-woo with you, but it seems to me like there is some sort of a movement sort of away from that type of thinking, that, dogma, toward a more spiritual way of viewing things and a more personal experience, rather than through or by some holier person than you that can get, can be the mouthpiece for you. It seems like there's something in the air, but maybe that's just me, and maybe that's just wishful thinking.
I think what you're talking about is it feels like there's that thing in the air because we happen to be in this point in our history a much more open society than usually happens. People don't realize in the free West what a little blip in the greater history this is. Okay, history has been full of tyranny. Okay, and control and having no speech and stuff. So people are more able to talk about these things. And of course, what's the reaction of your corporate, religious organizations? They demonize it. But that's how all religions do. When a religion is new and it's building power, it has to demonize all the other guys, And the same thing's going to, I got news for people. The same thing is going to happen to what we know as Christianity, that I call churchianity, and Islam and Judaism and all of it. There's going to be something else that comes along that it is going to demonize because it knows it's being replaced, and the thing that's replacing it is going to demonize it. And this is just the way it is. And all these things you're talking about, the spiritual, the more direct spirituality and stuff, it, of course, has been demonized for a long time by the churches because they're scared to death, to lose the butts in the seats and, the money in the collection dish.
The money, yeah. That's the real thing.
If you go directly to God or the gods or what have you, you don't need them. And they're too narcissistic. And
you don't need to give them your money.
Yeah. Well, not just your money. I do think, to get woo-woo with you, I am somebody who believes in the metaphysical and the these things. And I do think human beings have this thing that we happen to call a soul. And they do want control of that. There's something that they get out of, the energy they get out of controlling that. And I think there are beings out there that are definitely wanting our souls. This is, remember I said the nugget of truth idea. When you hear stories about demons wanting to steal your soul and possess you, I do think that that's a real thing, that there's a nugget of truth to that. And one does have to be very careful when one is on their own individually driven spiritual path, because there are scary things out there that are just lying in wait to get you. There's a lot of people who I remember some years back, people say, well, I believe in angels, but I don't believe in demons. I'm like, well, isn't that quaint? How cute. Yeah. Because, there are both positive and negative.
I do believe that there is a battle going on of good and evil.
Yeah.
And that there is an evil that is, almost tangible, that is out there. Mm-hmm. And we do have to be on guard for it. And
yes.
I think it comes to us in insidious ways that maybe trick us in that sort of thing too.
Sure. And they're looking to fool with us, and you just have to be careful with all this stuff. And that means also including the human agency telling you, hey, trust me, bro, I know what this God thing is about.
Yeah. I mean, when somebody tells me they've got all the answers, that's when I tune out, because I don't believe any of us have all the answers, and that's a surefire way to lose my attention really fast. Because nah, you don't. But anyhow, we were talking about secrets of the Vatican and secrets, that could affect different cultures and things that, I was going to say appear to be, but, they don't appear to be. They were downright stolen and confiscated.
Yeah.
So there's nothing, that could be adjudged as correct and right about that. If any other organization or individuals had done that, there would be mass consequences for that. That would be a crime.
Right.
And the holding of that stuff, to me, is a continuing crime. But we may or may not ever get all the answers on what it is that they have. I would love to see a lot of that stuff returned to the rightful people that should have them, because it means so much to them.
When the day comes that that organization falls from its own self-glorified grace, and the place is, they're not able to keep outsiders out, then we will definitely then, I think, finally know what's in there. And I think it'll anger a lot of people even more than are angry now. So,
another place of secrets that you and I've spoken about before, not in huge detail, but I know this is one of your areas of expertise, and is the continent of Antarctica. The things that we hear, are so crazy and outlandish.
Yeah.
But yet some of it does seem to have some sort of weight of truth. So is there anything you can do to sort of clear up some of this garbaggio that we've been...
Right. Yeah. Well, admittedly, I haven't been down there yet. I know a couple of people who have. Brad Olson is one of them. And, for the most part, you don't get to go into the heart of Antarctica. So a lot of the people that go to Antarctica, they only see one little part of the edge of it. So it is a land of mystery. I do think that I'll start out by saying, I do think that there are ruins of past civilization under the ice. I do think that stuff
doesn't sound crazy.
That's not crazy. Now, here's the thing. The recent story in the last, I want to say 5 to 10 years, my gosh, over 10 years now, they've been talking about, this group of scientists, they went underground and they saw something that scared them so badly that they were catatonic, and an alleged Navy SEAL tells Linda Moulton Howe this, and that it just scared the hell out of these scientists, and they were quiet, and there's this was found and that was found. Well, here's what's interesting. In the mid 1990s, I was told essentially the same thing by the man who was my mentor in my career. At the time he told me this, I was already an active duty Air Force officer, OSI agent. And he told me essentially the same story, but he told me that it happened around 1960. Okay, 1960. So it had happened over 30 years prior. So you have these people now claiming to be special forces operatives, telling luminaries in the UFO community this same thing, but as if it just happened. So that's why I have a problem. It seems to me like that particular narrative that people love to hear and is so popular the last decade, that sounds to me like a narrative that is used in the intelligence world. We have something called inking the waters. Okay. Yeah. And what you'll do is, if you want to test a source to see if they'll keep their mouth shut when you tell them to, and when you tell them something, you say, now don't tell anybody this, you tell them something that's not true.
Yeah.
Okay. And then if they run their mouth and then you hear that it's out there, then you'll know exactly, my guy talked. And I think that was one of those inking the water narratives that they would tell people to test their, if they could trust them. Now, I was told in the 90s, and I was told not to say anything about it. And I never did until this started being talked about, in our community about 10 or 12 years ago.
What is it that your contact told you?
That there was this giant hole, you could call it a cavern, I guess, that team of scientists found in Antarctica. And what they found was very large, huge machinery that was also very old. Machinery that was very old and huge down there under the ice in this hole in Antarctica. And that
did they venture an opinion as to what that machinery was?
So,
Or was it-
all that was implied to me about that was that it's I wasn't told if it was stuff that was brought from somewhere else or something that had been developed by a lost human civilization, which I lean towards that more. I know a lot of people are in love with everything's aliens, everything's extraterrestrials. I certainly think extraterrestrials exist. I think it's only logical and rational to
yeah,
accept that idea. But I lean towards when you get into like the Vedic histories and ideas, like the lost Rama and whatever the nugget of truth for Atlantis or Lemuria is, whatever the nugget of truth was. Okay, I think there is where the answer to this machinery, this ancient lost stuff.
yeah,
I think it's part of the relics in the secrets that they're keeping down there. So I do think there's something to the story in some sense.
right. There is something there.
Yeah, but for some reason, the intel and national security community likes to use this narrative apparently every so often. So I don't know if this is their way to ease us into the reveal someday or what. But
That's so bizarre. Now, what is it that is being put out there now that is not true that people are buying into?
Well, that's kind of I'll tell you, the idea that there was some secret advanced Nazi base that is patently absurd. It's ridiculous. The Nazi Germany did go down there and explore. They did claim territory. They did have some rudimentary ports that they could use, and I think a submarine pen, that kind of thing. But the energy and the resources that would have been required to maintain some flying saucer base, no, that's all fantasy. I'm in the camp that the Hanabu saucer, the alleged Nazi flying saucer, it's a load of BS. Okay, it can be, that myth can be traced to post.
So you don't think they were really trying to build their own flying saucers?
I think they were researching. I think there's much more something to the alleged Nazi Bell stories. I think that they were pursuing technology with that who knows, maybe down the road could have led and to propulsion system or flying saucer. But no, I don't think if they were looking at it, it was a thought. Maybe it was on paper. But the whole thing about the Hanabu and the Nazi flying saucers, that came out of post-war Nazi survival myth stuff. Okay, and when you look, people say, but what about the photographs? There's this one of it flying. Those are all doctored. Those are all fake. And you can trace this to a guy named Ernst Zundel, and then there's the two guys in the 80s. There's just no real substantiation to that, but people like to hear about it. It's fun, and there's people that want to insist upon their own truth, their own worldview, and it's their.
Yeah, it's a better story for them. More exciting to think that that's true, but
right.
That's sort of where we end up with so many problems in the field of research surrounding all these things, is that people sort of get seduced into these really wild and crazy stories. And unfortunately, a lot of people just believe something just because someone told them.
Yeah.
And don't go around and try to corroborate or debunk those kinds of things. And we know that, tons of misinformation and disinformation is put out there all the time by, lots of groups and folks in our own government and all that. Now, back to our government, a few months ago, we had some whistleblowers go before Congress to share information about UFOs and UAPs.
Mm-hmm.
Now, first of all, at that particular hearing, I didn't hear anything really firsthand firsthand knowledge. It
That's
was
right.
mostly reports.
That's right.
Then, secondly, we had all this buzzing and stirring among Congress, like, oh, we're going to get right on this. We're going to, and then what have we heard since then?
Right.
Zero, zilch.
Yeah.
So was that just a exercise in futility? What was that?
It was thrown a bone to some people.
Pacifier.
It was a pacifier for the squeaky wheelers. But more importantly, look, back in 2017, all these newbies in ufology, especially, but even some people in ufology have been around a while that should know better. Yeah. Back in 2017, when they thought this New York Times article, which has since been proven to be a load of nonsense, and Lou Elizondo and Christopher Mellon and the whole TTSA thing, and then one government whistleblower after another. What that is, folks, from my perspective, being an old counter-espionage, double agent running kind of guy, what I recognized immediately was, this is a psyop that's meant to take control of the ufology narrative. Okay. I was I remember taking a lot of heat from people in the community because from the get-go, from the press conference at TTSA, I told associates, this Elizondo guy, nonsense. He's working for Uncle Sam. This is all an operation. And, so what we were seeing with these hearings, okay, it was then the latest step in the let's control the UFO narrative, because what they're trying to do is build up the threat narrative. Okay. And why do military organizations and agents build up a threat narrative? Because they want the people behind them when it comes time to spend more money on the weaponry and stuff. Now, I am a military officer, reserve and active, but you're commissioned for life in the U.S. Here's the thing. I understand military motives. And believe me, folks, you Americans listening out there, and in any country you're in, you want your country to have its secret weapons so that if we get into another world war or a conflict, you got something to pound that enemy that they're not expecting. That's a necessary evil in this world. You want that kind of thing. But, people have to keep that in mind in ufology, that when you see military or the intelligence community guys coming out in force like they did, folks, it's to control a narrative. And these hearings was just to advance the narrative and to get more people in ufology, the enthusiasts, to believe what the government guys are saying. And, that's my perspective on it. That's why it was a big nothing. Grush was a big nothing.
That's what I wanted to ask you. I don't know if you want to do this, but okay, you said he was a big nothing. What do you think he was doing? Was he following orders? Was he sincere? What?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
I was chief of a operations unit for a while when I was with OSI, and we worked with assets that we had to send all over the world. Okay. And in the vetting process, you identify, okay, what kind of source is this going to be? You have fully witting sources that are sharp. Okay. You have unwitting sources. They don't know that you're using them to get information or pass messages. That's the unwitting.
Right.
Then there's the useful,
idiot.
That's what we say in common parlance, the useful idiot. And I think, unfortunately for Grush, he falls into that category. He was somebody who he was getting close to retirement, and he was put out there in front, in contact with some ufology people, and he was somebody that I would say his handlers, okay, whether he was fully witting or not, his handlers assessed him to be, he believes in this stuff, or he's really interested in this stuff. He's a perfect guy to use as, another face in this, and we'll be able to lead people astray and keep them busy for at least a year or two, however long. Just like Lou Elizondo, okay? The only intention of him being around in this was to be useful for about 2 or 3 years, and then they would replace him with someone else. And Grush, I think, it's much the same. So it
What
really
about
is.
the pilots that were there?
Oh, you're talking about the Tic Tac. Okay,
Yeah.
I said this back when it first emerged publicly, and I stand by it today. And there are the U.S. Navy patents to back this up. There's knowledge of what that zone off of the coast of California is used for and who it's controlled by. The Tic Tac was our technology. All
Wow.
this nonsense you hear about it, moving faster than anything we have and the way it maneuvers, these were exaggerations that were coming out of excitement and hearsay. Okay.
And
I would
wishful
say
thinking.
if I was having a beer with Commander Fravor, I'd say, Commander, come on now. You know that you're talking BS about, the really pushing, letting people think this is otherworldly or not ours. Here's the thing. Even a big hotshot squadron commander, U.S. naval aviator is not going to be briefed in on everything being developed. And when he said that, if it was ours, I would have known it. Boy, the height of arrogance. He knows better than to say something like that. There's all sorts of reasons why that incident points to our technology being tested. And they say, well, they wouldn't test it on our own people. Nonsense. Yes, they would. Those planes, they were out on a training, proficiency sortie. Okay. Those planes were unarmed. Okay. It's not like they were demonstrating this to an armed aircraft that could have shot them down. Okay. Now, another thing is this was not just right off Coronado Island for the whole city of San Diego to watch this. This was miles out to sea, second of all. So, when you look close enough at it and you give it an honest assessment, the Tic Tac is our technology. Okay. And think about it. They had that experience in 2004. This is 20 years later. Imagine what are they doing with that technology now? But all this was part of what they want to do, Renee, is they want you to look over here. Okay, look over here when what's going on is over there.
Right.
So Greg Bishop, an old friend of mine, he's always said, if you see a UFO or something weird right in front of you, have the presence of mind to turn around and look behind you. Maybe there's, something they don't want you to see. That's why there's that distraction. Not that UFOs, there aren't real ones, but this is in the mix and they're using it to their advantage.
Yeah, look around just in case you're being distracted from something else.
Yeah.
How is old Greg Bishop?
Doing good. He's
we got to get him back on here again.
Yeah, he's still out there.
Yeah. I remember him from my UFO magazine days and his publication. Really good. So to sum it up, lots of secrets everywhere.
Yeah.
Lots of ulterior motives. The church has their motives. Obviously, the governments have their motives. Do you see, looking at the world community in the idea of UAP and UFO, do you see a government that is closer to outing the phenomenon and telling the truth about it?
No. I've said for several years now, I'm personally convinced, it's just my position. I think disclosure is going to come when, in the case of the extraterrestrials, they're just going to do it themselves. They're not going to care what the United States military, the United States government, or any government on Earth says.
Yeah.
When in fact, I think I give this much credit to the governments. I think the aliens they're the ones that are controlling disclosure. I think they're the ones that have said, we will have contact with you. Okay. You are not to tell your people that we're here. And I think our governments have are going along with that. Now, that's where the slice of these things that is ET is concerned. That's what I think. A great majority of it, I think over 90% of the legitimate UFO sightings people have, that's secret human technology. But that little bit that's really extraterrestrial, I think the extraterrestrials. And when they decide, okay, we want the people of the world to know, they're just going to pop right into our skies and say, we're here. And it's, it's like the end of Apocalypto, that movie where the Mayans being chased by the Aztecs or whoever, and through the whole movie, and then they end up, I don't want to spoil the movie, but it's been out for decades.
Yeah.
At the end of the movie, they stop and they freeze and they see the Spanish ship has arrived on their shore, and they've never seen anything like that. And they stop their fight between themselves to stare at this thing, and they realize their world and their reality is
They're in a world of hurt. Yep.
Yeah. And I think that's how we're going to get disclosure. But this disclosure movement,
You're probably right. Yeah.
it's ridiculous. It's doing nothing.
It is crazy. Well, it looks like we're at the end of our time. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have, Walter.
Absolutely. I love talking about
to come back again. There's so much we could talk about.
Yes.
So I hope you'll come back soon.
I will. Thank you for having me. And all you got to do is ask, and I'll
keep me posted. And now, how do we get your books? You got lots and lots of books.
There's walterbosley.com, where several of my books are linked, or there's lulu.com. I ask people to go to Lulu or walterbosley.com, because if you get them through Amazon, they take just about all the royalties. So if you want to support,
so lulu.com or walterbosley.com are better.
Yeah.
Cool. We will do it. Thanks, everybody. Hope everybody has a great weekend. Take care.